Mr. Callahan, why are you asking us for $6,000? Claudia Renfrew kept her voice low, but the question still seemed to strike the walls of her office. Outside the glass, people stood in line with deposit slips and winter coats. A little boy spun in circles beside the Christmas tree in the lobby. Everything looked ordinary. What had shifted was the woman sitting across from me, 10 minutes before she'd been a polite bank manager going through the paperwork on a modest home repair loan. Now the office door was locked, and the shade had been drawn halfway. I kept both hands resting on the manila folder in my lap, which held 3 contractor estimates for a furnace replacement. The least expensive bid came in just under $6,000. My furnace had quit on Tuesday night, and the house was 44 degrees when I got up that morning. Space heaters would hold me over for a while, but January wasn't far off. Claudia angled her monitor away from the lobby windows. The color had drained from her face. That isn't what I mean. She pressed a finger to a single line on the screen. I recognized my full name. I recognized the last 4 digits of my social security number. Then came a figure with more commas in it than anything I had ever laid claim to. 28-4-12-6119. My first thought was that it belonged to somebody else entirely. I was 72 years old. 38 years I had spent keeping electrical systems running for the railroad. My pension and Social Security came to a little over $4,800 a month. My son had told me that nearly everything I'd saved had gone toward my late wife's medical care and my own heart surgery. I cut coupons to stretch the grocery budget. I drove a 16-year-old Dodge. The back porch still needed repairs I'd put off because Adrian kept telling me the money wasn't there. That can't be mine, I said. Claudia's gaze drifted to the office door. The account is a family trust. You are listed as the primary lifetime beneficiary. Our bank acquired the fiduciary company that administers it 8 months ago. The records were consolidated last week. Your Social Security number triggered the match when I ran your loan application. Who controls it? She paused before answering. That pause told me more than the balance ever could. My son, I said. It came out as a statement, not a question. Claudia gave a single nod. Adrian Callahan is listed as acting distribution advisor under an incapacity provision. The correspondence address is his home in Findlay. There is also a corporate co-trustee. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask her to read the number back to me. My mind didn't drift toward yachts or luxury cars or a retirement home someplace warm. Instead, I heard Loretta's voice thin and fading in a hospital bed 9 years ago. Make sure the children don't let money turn them into strangers. I had convinced myself that risk had passed along with the small savings she'd left behind. I set the furnace estimates down on Claudia's desk. Welcome back to Honor Revenge Stories, where the most powerful accounts come from real lives, the ones that tested everything and still found a way through. If stories like this one stay with you, I hope you'll consider subscribing and leaving a like. It means more than you know. Before we begin, drop one word in the comments that describes how you're feeling right now as you settle in. One word is all I need. And a quick note. Some details in this story have been shaped for audio storytelling, and any resemblance to specific individuals is purely coincidental. What matters is the truth at the center of it. Print everything you're legally permitted to give me. Mr. Callahan, there are restrictions, but as beneficiary, you have a right to an accounting. Then start with that. Claudia studied me for a moment. Do you have an attorney? Not anymore. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? That question put a tightness behind my ribs. Why would I need somewhere safe? She rotated the screen further in my direction and pointed to a recent entry. It wasn't a withdrawal. It was a notation from the trust department. Petition for permanent guardianship, pending supporting documents received from Adrian Callahan. The date was the morning. My son had gone to court seeking a declaration of mental incompetence against me on the very day I walked into a bank and discovered the fortune he'd been concealing for 9 years. I closed the folder and got to my feet. My legs held steady, though I could hear my pulse in my ears. Mrs. Renfrew, please don't call my son. Bank policy may require our trust department to notify the acting advisor that you requested this. I'm not asking you to break the law, I said, buttoning my old coat. I'm asking you to follow it very carefully. For the first time, something warmer crossed her face. I can do that. I turned toward the door, glanced back at the staggering balance still visible on her screen, and added, Please cancel the loan application. Claudia nearly smiled, though neither of us felt much like it. Mr. Callahan, this account may be yours, but that does not mean the money is safe. I understand. I didn't. Not yet. But before the day was out, I would come to see that Adrian had not simply taken money. He had taken my name, stripped away my choices, and stolen 8 years of my life with my daughter. The $28 million was only the trail he hadn't been careful enough to hide. The temperature outside was 18 degrees. I sat in the Dodge with the engine idling and watched the foot traffic moving through the bank's revolving door. My first instinct was to call Adrian. That impulse shamed me now, but years of habit had built it in. When the insurance company tangled up a claim, I called Adrian. When a property tax bill didn't look right, I called Adrian. When my debit card was declined at the grocery store, I called Adrian, and he explained that he had shifted funds between accounts for my own protection. He was 45, well-dressed, and patient enough, when it served him very skilled at making control feel like devotion. 9 years earlier, after my bypass surgery, I had awakened to find him beside my hospital bed, holding a legal pad. Don't worry about Bill's dad. She had died only 6 months before. Grief had turned ordinary tasks into walls. I could troubleshoot a signal cabinet in a blizzard, but I couldn't open an envelope addressed to both of us without losing the rest of the afternoon. Adrian offered to take over the paperwork. I signed a temporary financial power of attorney with a nurse as witness. The document was meant to expire after 90 days. Once I recovered, Adrian kept right on helping. In the beginning, he walked me through every statement. Then the paper statements stopped coming. He said everything had migrated online. When I asked for login credentials, he told me the sites were confusing and riddled with scams. That should have struck me as an insult. Instead, I heard worry in his voice because I wanted to. He began routing my pension into a household account and sending me a set amount each month for groceries and utilities, anything extra I had to ask for. He never used the word allowance, but that's exactly what it was. There isn't much left after Mom's care, he reminded me whenever I brought up repairs. We have to make it last. Loretta's final year had been costly. Insurance covered most of it, but not everything. Adrian showed me spreadsheets, pharmacy charges, private nursing, physical therapy, legal fees. I never checked the arithmetic myself. A man can spend a lifetime teaching his children to be honest, and still neglect to verify whether the lesson took. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Adrian. For one foolish moment, I wondered if he already knew something. I let it ring 4 times before picking up. Hello, Dad. Where are you? His voice was easy, almost cheerful. I stopped by with Portia. Your car's gone. I had errands to run in this weather. The roads are clear. A pause followed. Adrian didn't care for answers he hadn't anticipated. Did you go to the pharmacy? Among other places. What other places? I looked across the lot toward Claudia's shaded office window. Why do you ask? He laughed, but it landed a beat too late. Your furnace is out and you're supposed to be taking it easy. Portia found a retirement community with immediate availability. Just until we get things sorted. I'm not moving into a retirement community. Nobody said permanently. It's respite care. I can sleep in my own house. Dad, this stubbornness is exactly what worries me. His voice went soft in the practiced way he used when others were within earshot. You left the stove on last month. I left a kettle on for 6 minutes. You forgot it. I was in the basement resetting a breaker. This is what I mean. You always have an explanation. In the background, I heard Portia murmur something. Then Adrian covered the receiver. The words became muffled, but 2 of them came through clearly enough. Bank and today. When he came back, the easy tone was gone. Did you try to take out a loan? There it was. Who told you that I get credit alerts? We agreed I would monitor them. We had never agreed to anything of the sort. He had simply done it. The furnace needs replacing, I said. I told you I'd handle it. You told me there wasn't enough money. There isn't enough money to throw $6,000 at the first contractor who frightens you. I had 3 estimates. Silence. For years, I had mistaken that silence for patience. Sitting in that cold parking lot, I finally heard it for what it was. Calculation? Which bank? He asked. Why does that matter? Dad. His tone hardened. Which bank? I watched my breath cloud the windshield. You'll see me Sunday. We're coming back tonight. No, the house is cold. Then tell me where you are. I'm 72 years old, Adrian. I don't need permission to run errands. This isn't about permission. It's about safety. Goodbye. I ended the call. My hand was trembling. I hated that. I pressed it flat against the steering wheel until it steadied. There was only one attorney who came to mind, and I hadn't spoken to him since Loretta's funeral. Burton Alcott had handled her father's estate and drawn up our wills. A soft-spoken man with steel gray hair, he kept an old office above a pharmacy in downtown Delphos. I pulled up his number, expecting a receptionist. Burton answered himself. Alcott Pierce. Burton. This is Gerald Callahan. He went so quiet I checked to see if the call had cut out. Gerald, he said at last. Where are you? In my car outside Harrow County Savings. Are you alone? That was the second time in 20 minutes someone had asked me that. Yes. Tell me exactly what happened. So I did. I walked him through the balance, Claudia's name, the guardianship notation, and Adrian's phone call. Burton said nothing until I got to Loretta's trust. Do not go home, he said. Everyone keeps telling me that. Because Adrian has been building a case that you cannot look after yourself. A house without heat could be used as evidence whether the furnace quit on its own or not. You think he broke my furnace? I think we should assume nothing and document everything. Burton, did you know about this trust? Another silence. Yes, he said. That single word landed harder than it had any right to. For 9 years, I knew Loretta had created it. I didn't know the company had been acquired or that the holdings had grown so large. After your surgery, Adrian sent me a letter terminating my services on your behalf. I tried to reach you. He said you wanted no further contact. I never said that. I know that now. Why didn't you come to my door? I did twice. The first time Adrian said you were sleeping. The second time, you were staying with him during cardiac rehabilitation. I sent 3 letters. All came back to me. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. Another person I had blamed for going silent had been turned away using my own name. Burton spoke quietly. Come to my office. Park behind the building. I'll arrange for a locksmith to meet us at your house along with a licensed heating inspector. We need facts before Adrian manufactures more of them. I'm not running from my son. No, Burton said. You're stepping out of the room while he sets the stage. Burton's office hadn't changed. The same oak-framed clock sat on his desk. The same frame photograph showed him and Loretta's father holding walleyes beside a lake. Only Burton looked older. Then again, so did I. He locked the door behind me and took my coat. Coffee black poured from a machine in the corner. I noticed his hand trembled faintly as he set down the cup. You're frightened, I said. I'm angry at Adrian, at myself. Loretta had asked me to serve as trust protector. I turned it down. I was headed into retirement. I pointed her toward a corporate fiduciary instead and held on to copies of the founding documents. When Adrian severed contact, I let myself accept the story that it was your wish. He crossed the room to a fireproof cabinet and pulled out a thick blue binder. Loretta Ann Callahan. Irrevocable Family Trust ran across the cover in stamped letters. Seeing her full name printed there tightened my throat. Burton set one hand flat on top of the binder. Before we look at a single page, I need to walk through the same questions Adrian's lawyer will put to you. What is today's date? Friday, December 12th. Who is the current president? I answered. What did you have this morning for breakfast? Scrambled eggs and half a glass of orange juice. And how did you get here? I came east along County Road 6, turned onto Maple, then 3rd, and pulled in behind your building next to a delivery van with a burned-out left tail light. Burton's mouth moved slightly. Any falls over the past year? No. Missed medications. Thus, any diagnosis affecting memory? Hasta no. Good. Then we set up an independent medical evaluation and quickly, not your regular physician. Dr. Brennan has been my doctor for 20 years. And who books those appointments for you I already knew? Adrian. Burton spread the binder open. Loretta came from a family of means, though nothing about the way we carried ourselves advertised it. Her father, Bernard Pryor, had built his start from a machine shop, turning out precision valves. By the time Loretta and I were married, that shop had grown into Pryor Surgical Systems, a well-regarded regional manufacturer. Loretta held a minority stake in non-voting shares. We lived off my railroad wages and put every dividend back to work. She always said those shares were insurance for our old age, for emergencies for the children when we were gone. The trust was where they lived. Loretta held control over them for as long as she was alive. When she died, the role of sole lifetime beneficiary passed to me. The trust was authorized to cover housing, medical care, education, upkeep, and my general needs. Anything left when I died would go to Adrian and Suzanne in equal shares. Equal, I repeated. Adrian told me Loretta had cut Suzanne out almost entirely because of something she had done. Burton's eyes came up. What exactly do you understand Suzanne to have done? She pushed Loretta to revise the will while Loretta was ill. Adrian produced emails. According to them, Suzanne had called him a thief and argued the company shares belonged to her. Had you ever gone to Suzanne for her side of it? She wouldn't give one, or wasn't allowed to. Something went stale in my coffee. Burton turned ahead to the incapacity provisions. Under its terms, the corporate trustee could name a distribution advisor once two independent physicians declared I lacked capacity. First in line was Adrian, second was Suzanne. Any advisor found to have concealed material information, engaged in self-dealing, or operated in bad faith would be removed and treated as having predeceased me when it came time to divide what remained. Loretta had demanded that clause herself. Burton told me she'd had a front row seat to her father's family fighting over his estate. How did Adrian end up in that role at all? I had bypass surgery. That didn't make me incompetent. That is only one of several things I need to understand. Burton slid his glasses off. The original trustee of record was Heritage Fiduciary Services, cautious, unhurried, and small. Over 4 years, it sold hands twice. Harrow County Savings was the final buyer of what was left. Documents may be fragmented. Is Adrian free to reach into the principal? Not outright, but he can put forward distribution requests on your behalf. If whoever reviews them at the bank isn't careful, funds can walk out the door. How much has gone, the accounting will tell us. A sharp knock hit the office door. Burton and I both stilled. It came a second time. Gerald Callahan, a voice called from the hall. Burton went to the street-facing window, looked down, came back. Process server. He moved quickly. Adrian set this in motion before you ever walked into that bank. Burton opened the door. A young man in a dark blue parka confirmed my name, put an envelope in my hand, and said the words that meant I'd been served. He carried himself like someone who didn't enjoy this particular errand. The petition was 32 pages. Adrian had sworn that I suffered from progressive cognitive decline, financial confusion, paranoia, erratic driving, medication, failures, and an inability to maintain my home. He wanted emergency temporary guardianship, the right to direct my medical care, and authority to transfer me to supervised housing. Photographs were attached, paint peeling from my back porch, a burned kettle, a box of unopened mail, and a thermostat showing 40/60s. That thermostat image had been captured the same morning. He was walking through my house while I sat in that bank, I said. Burton took the page from me. You mentioned Portia was there with him, so he told me. There was another exhibit, a video. It showed me lying in a hospital bed after bypass surgery 9 years ago, disoriented and confused. The transcript had me calling Adrian by my late brother's name and asking for Loretta a few lost seconds when I'd forgotten she was dead. I remembered that morning with terrible clarity. Tubes in my chest, morphine running, Adrian at the bedside phone tilted downward. I had assumed he was texting Suzanne with news. He kept that recording for 9 years, I said barely above a whisper. Burton's jaw went rigid. The formal hearing falls on Monday morning. He's pushing for an emergency order today, no advance warning to you, but the fact of service opens a door for us to answer. 3 days before they can pull me from my own home. They cannot remove you outright. The petition says they can. Would a judge actually sign off? Burton gave me the truth rather than comfort. A 72-year-old widower alone in a house gone cold, caught on video. Mumbling incoherently after open-heart surgery, with a son on the stand saying he fears for his father's safety. A judge might well approve limited temporary authority pending the Monday hearing. I stared at the thermostat photograph again. Every ordinary detail of my life had been feeding Adrian's file while I wrote him a thank you notes in my head. My phone lit up with a message from Portia. We love you, Dad. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Burton read it beside me. Don't answer that. I want him to know I'm not frightened. He already knows. It's why they filed today. He stepped away to call the courthouse, then a doctor he vouched for personally. I kept working through the pages while he talked. Suzanne's address was listed as unknown in the petition. Adrian had described her as estranged, citing a pattern of financial exploitation on her part. Near the back beneath the heading of interested parties was an address in Bowling Green. For 8 years I had been told Suzanne was somewhere out in Colorado. She was 43 miles from where I was sitting. The heating inspector arrived at the house at 4:30. His name was Chet Wide Shoulders, engine grease ground into his cuffs, and the manner of a man who had no interest in problems that came down to a single loose connection. Burton filmed from the doorway as Chet lifted off the furnace panel. In under 5 minutes, he raised a small copper safety switch between 2 fingers. This was disconnected, he said. Is that something that could happen on its own? Burton asked. Not the way this one did. The retaining clip had been taken out deliberately and set down inside the cabinet. He showed us exactly where. Whoever touched this understood how to shut the unit down and leave no visible damage. Adrian moved commercial real estate for a living. Furnaces were not his territory, but Portia's younger brother ran a property maintenance operation. I kept that observation to myself. Get the facts established first, that was what Burton had said. Chet fitted the switch back into place. Within a few minutes, warm air was flowing again. The furnace itself was perfectly sound. How much do I owe, I asked. $95 for the service call. It was the one clean transaction I'd had since morning. Burton arranged for a locksmith to rekey the doors. Then we moved room to room with cameras, full refrigerator medication organizer, with every dose labeled unblemished stovetop. A drawer of paid utility bills filed in order. The pile of unopened envelopes from Adrian's photo had come out of the recycling bin. Circulars and coupons, nearly all of it. What I hadn't put there was a cream-colored envelope centered on the kitchen table. Ridgecroft Senior Living was embossed across the front flap. It held an admissions contract. A room had been set aside for Monday afternoon. Monthly cost, $9,200. The authorization line directed payment to the Loretta Callahan Trust. My own money earmarked to take me off the board. Burton worked through the contract paragraph by paragraph. There's a non-refundable community fee of $25,000 already listed as paid. Could the trust release that without my knowledge? Evidently it had. I eased down into Loretta's chair at the kitchen table. She had picked that table out when Adrian was 9 years old, and Suzanne was 6. The kids spread their schoolwork across it every evening. Loretta shaped her pie crusts on it. After she fell ill, we would end up there late at night, sitting together without saying much, both of us pretending not to be scared. The house was never meant to impress anyone. A 2-story Victorian with blue shutters and a porch. I rebuilt myself, that was all it was. Loretta had taken her first significant dividend payment and cleared the mortgage with it. The shrewdest thing we'd ever done with money, she said. Adrian's petition now called it a deteriorating structure. I stubbornly refused to vacate. Why now, I said out loud. He has had the run of this trust for years. What is pushing him to move today? Burton aligned the admission papers next to the petition on the table. Something shifted. My phone rang a second time. Claudia, Mr. Callahan. I apologize for reaching out past closing, she said. Our compliance officer turned up an instruction filed yesterday. It directs a distribution of $4.7 million toward purchasing a commercial property. The stated purpose is to secure housing and generate long-term income on your behalf. Which property? An old hotel on the outskirts of Findlay. The buyer of record is VDM Living Holdings. VDM standing for Portia Wyndham and Adrian Callahan. Can that be blocked? Burton asked, angling toward the phone. Monday is when the transaction is set to close, Claudia said. Because Mr. Callahan appeared in person today and disputed incapacity. I filed an internal elder exploitation alert. Compliance has placed a temporary hold pending verification. Will Adrian be notified? He may already have received an automated delay notice. That explained the urgency. Adrian needed a guardianship order before the bank finished its review. With an emergency ruling in hand, he could argue that my objection amounted to nothing. Claudia went on, there is more. The trust has been paying a consulting firm called Vale Management Group roughly $31,000 a month for the past 7 years. The stated purposes in the file are property oversight, beneficiary support, and care coordination. Who owns it? Public records name, Portia Wyndham as managing member. $31,000 a month, over $2.5 million across 7 years. Portia had come by perhaps twice a month, rarely staying more than an hour. She handled my prescription deliveries, sorted out cable disputes, and made sure I knew I should be grateful. Can those records go to Burton? Once you sign an authorization, I can have the paperwork ready first thing tomorrow morning. I'll be at the door when you open. After we hung up, Burton settled into the chair across from me. Gerald, this may end up as a criminal matter. He is my son. I know. I taught him to ride a bike in that driveway. I sat up 2 nights running when he had pneumonia. After he totaled his first car, I worked overtime for 6 months to help him get another one. Burton waited. And he cut the wire on my furnace, I said. We haven't confirmed that yet. No, we've only confirmed he took pictures of what it looked like afterward. The furnace ran steadily beneath us. The kitchen was warm, but I couldn't stop the shivering. Burton indicated Suzanne's address in the petition. Do you want me to reach out to her? I found myself picturing Suzanne at 28 standing on our front porch the day after Loretta's funeral, her face swollen and raw. Adrian had been just behind me, a hand on my shoulder, while I told her I had read the emails. I told her I was done with lies. She kept saying, "Dad, please just let me show you." I shut the door. That was the last time I'd seen my daughter. "No," I said. Then I took it back. "I need to go tonight if she'll agree to it." Burton glanced at the dark windows. He would drive. Suzanne lived in a small brick duplex near Bowling Green State University. A paper snowflake was taped to the front window. A blue hatchback sat in the drive, and a child's bicycle leaned against the garage wall. "I didn't know she had a child," I said. Burton cut the engine. "A son. His name is Eli. He's 7. I turned and looked at him. "You knew Suzanne phoned me after the boy was born. She wanted to know if you might accept a photograph. Did she ever send one?" "She did. I never got it." Burton looked toward the lit porch. "I believe you." The porch light flicked on before we made it up the walk. A small boy appeared at the glass door, took one look at 2 old men, and sprinted away. Then Suzanne opened the door. She was 48 in my memory. She had stayed frozen at 40. Her dark hair was cut shorter now, silver beginning to show near the temples. She had Loretta's eyes. None of us moved. "Dad?" I had put together something to say during the drive over. None of it held up against that single syllable. "I was wrong," I said. Her grip tightened on the doorframe. "I was wrong about you," I continued. "I don't know yet by how much, but enough that I should have come years before now." She looked past me toward Burton. "What happened?" "Adrian filed for guardianship," he said. "Gerald found a trust." Every trace of color left her face. She drew us inside and locked the door behind her. The boy stood watching from the hallway. Suzanne crouched down to him. "Eli, this is my father, your grandfather." Eli looked me over with frank curiosity. "The train grandpa." My chest seized. "You told him about me." Suzanne's eyes filled. I told him the good parts. Eli stepped closer. He wore rocket ship pajamas and held a model fire truck with a broken ladder. "Mom said you can fix anything on a train." "Most things," I said. My voice gave out on the second word. He placed the truck in my hands as matter-of-factly as if that were the whole reason we had met. Suzanne sent him upstairs to read, promising to come up soon. Then she brought us into a small dining room. One end of the table was covered in papers. Bank statements, printed emails, certified mail receipts, and photographs, all sorted into labeled folders. "You've been keeping all of this," Burton said. I knew he'd eventually push too hard. Suzanne didn't look my way. I just didn't know whether Dad would still be alive when it happened. I deserved that. I let it settle. She opened a red folder and slid several emails toward me. The first appeared to come from her, addressed to Adrian. Dated 2 weeks before Loretta died. "Mom isn't thinking clearly. Get Dad out of the room and make her sign the shares to me. He'll waste everything if we let him." That was the email Adrian had shown me at the funeral. Suzanne set another page alongside it. This is what my sent folder actually held. Verified by the email provider during an earlier investigation. Adrian mom is frightened and on heavy medication. Stop pressing her to sign anything. Dad needs to be in the room, and Burton should go over every document before anyone signs. I don't care what happens to the shares. I care that nobody is bullying her. The timestamps matched. The emails were nearly identical, except for 2 characters. "He altered it," I said. "He built a look-alike address and forwarded the doctored version to himself. He did it with 3 separate emails. Why didn't you reach me?" Suzanne's composure broke. I tried. She held up a certified mail envelope stamped "refused." My name and address were printed across the front. Adrian's handwriting had marked it "returned to sender." Recipient declines. Another envelope had gone to the rehabilitation facility after my surgery. It came back stamped "patient discharged," though I was still there for 12 more days. She laid out call logs, 47 attempts over 6 months, most of them cut off in under 5 seconds. Adrian had quietly added her number to the block list on the phone plan he controlled for me. "I came to the house 4 times, she said. "Once Portia told me you were sleeping. Twice no one answered. The last time Adrian met me at the end of the driveway and told me you'd call the police if I ever came back. Why did you stop trying?" The anger in her face gave way to something hollow. "Because I was pregnant, Dad. My husband had just walked out. I was carrying 2 jobs at once. And every time I got close to reaching you, Adrian found a way to make me pay for it. He called my employer and accused me of stealing from a vulnerable adult. He contacted my landlord. He told Mom's family I had a drug problem. I never believed that part. You believed enough I looked down at my own hands. Yes, the house held no sound except the furnace and the distant scrape of Eli moving around upstairs. I need to understand what happened with the trust, I said. Suzanne sat across from me. About 3 months after your surgery, I received a notice naming Adrian as temporary distribution advisor. I objected. The trust required certification from 2 independent physicians before anyone could be named. One letter was from your cardiologist. The other supposedly came from a neurologist. I called that office directly. They had never seen you. Did you inform the trustee? Burton asked. I sent the documentation to Heritage. Their compliance officer started a formal review. Within 2 weeks, she was gone, let go in a merger. Adrian told the incoming officer that I was a bitter remainder beneficiary making a grab for control. Then he produced the doctored emails. Why didn't you take it to court? I asked. With what money? Adrian had Mom's estate attorneys, the trust company's backing, and a signed declaration saying you wanted no contact from me. I never signed any such thing. Suzanne opened another folder. Inside was a single-page letter under my name. I request that Suzanne Callahan receive no information regarding my finances or medical condition. Her continued interference causes me distress. The signature resembled mine, but the R leaned too far to the right. Burton held it beneath the lamp. This may have been traced off another document. I reported suspected forgery to County Adult Protective Services, Suzanne said. A caseworker came to visit Dad. Adrian was there throughout. The case was closed after Dad said he trusted him completely. I remembered the visit. The woman asked whether anyone was managing my money against my will. Adrian had made coffee and was seated at the kitchen table. I'd laughed and told her my son was the only reason my bills were paid on time. My own words had closed the very door Suzanne had fought to crack open. I'm sorry, I said. She folded her arms. That doesn't restore 8 years. No, it doesn't give Eli a grandfather at his kindergarten play. No, it doesn't give me Mom's last Christmas back. You made me leave before dessert because Adrian said I upset her. I shut my eyes. Loretta had asked me afterward where Suzanne had gone. I told her Suzanne had chosen work over family. Loretta turned her face to the window and didn't say another word that evening. No, I whispered. It doesn't restore any of it. Suzanne's voice softened, but only slightly. Then why are you here? Because Adrian is trying to have me declared incompetent. Because he buried your mother's trust. Because I need the truth. I looked at those folders then, at my daughter. But even if none of that were happening, I should have come long ago. I should have heard your side before I believed documents that confirmed what I was already afraid of. What were you afraid of? That after your mother was gone, there would be nothing left of this family unless I held tight to the child who stayed nearest. Suzanne looked away. I chose the one who made himself necessary to me, I said, and I drove out the one who asked me to stand on my own. A long silence settled over the room. Then Eli appeared at the doorway with the fire truck. Can you fix the ladder now? Suzanne wiped her cheek. Not now, honey. I reached out my hand. Can I take a look? Eli carried it over. The plastic hinge had slipped free of its mounting. I used the tip of Burton's pocket knife to work it back into position. Eli rolled the truck down the table. It moved without catching. He grinned. Mom was right. Suzanne looked at me, her face suspended between grief and something more guarded. You can stay for coffee, she said. Then we get to work. We worked until nearly midnight. Suzanne had spent years gathering pieces, but she had never had a full accounting of the trust. Claudia's records began filling the holes the next morning. Burton, Suzanne, and I met her at the bank before the lobby doors opened. A security guard walked us through a side entrance and up to a conference room on the second floor. Claudia had brought the bank's trust compliance officer, a methodical man who introduced himself, offered an apology for what he was not yet free to discuss, and then said something I thought well of. Our acquisition does not erase our responsibility, he said. If earlier institutions failed in their duties, we inherited the obligation to make it right. He set 3 binders on the table. The first traced the trust's growth. When Loretta died, the prior surgical shares carried a value of roughly $3.2 million. 2 years on a global medical manufacturer took the company over. The proceeds, cash and stock alike, went into the trust. Sound investments and favorable markets handled the rest. At its peak, the account held more than $31 million. The second binder laid out distributions. The trust had paid my medical insurance premiums, property taxes, and a handful of household bills, all legitimate. But those routine charges were buried beneath payments I had never once seen. Vail Management Group had drawn $264 in monthly fees. VDM Living Holdings received $900,000 as a housing development advance. A Findlay dealership was paid $138,000 for two vehicles described as beneficiary transportation. I had never driven either of them. A private club had collected $84,000 in membership dues filed under social wellness. Luxury travel appeared as family-supported respite. While I sat home reheating leftovers, Adrian and Portia were in Italy, Costa Rica, and a Bahamas resort, all billed against my care. The third binder held advisor certifications. Each quarter, Adrian had signed a declaration confirming that every distribution served my welfare and that he had no conflicting interest. My son's signature appeared 87 times. I turned every page. Anger pressed me to stop looking, but anger had already taken enough from me. I wanted to see the full extent of what he had done. "How much in total did they take?" I asked. The compliance officer laced his fingers together. "Payments flowing directly to entities connected to Adrian or Portia come to at least $3.7 million. That figure excludes amounts still under review." The proposed $4.7 million transaction didn't go through. "What allowed the corporate trustee to approve any of this?" Suzanne asked. The documentation represented Mr. Callahan as incapacitated and living under his son's constant care. Vale submitted monthly care reports. Claudia slid one across to me. It described meal preparation, help with bathing rides to medical appointments, home safety monitoring, and daily cognitive exercises. According to Portia's reports, I needed assistance getting dressed and could not safely be left on my own for more than 2 hours. On many of the dates in that report, she hadn't set foot in my house. Who was responsible for verifying these? Burton asked. A trust officer named Dwight Farrow approved most of the distributions. He left the predecessor company 18 months ago. Any connection to the Calla house? We are examining that. Suzanne pointed to one line in a report. It says Dad moved into Adrian's home in March. I was there 17 days after rehabilitation, I said. The compliance officer gave a careful nod. Our file carries that as your permanent residence. My driver's license, tax filings, and voter registration show something different. Yes. He looked uncomfortable. They do. Claudia opened a smaller folder. This is the original incapacity certification. The first letter came from my cardiologist 6 days after surgery. It said I was temporarily unable to manage complex decisions while hospitalized and receiving narcotic pain medication. Temporary was underlined. The second came from a neurologist named Dr. Felix Orozco, stating that I suffered probable vascular dementia and would not recover independent capacity. I have never seen Dr. Orozco, I said. Suzanne tapped the letterhead. That phone number connects to an answering service. I called it years ago. Burton studied the notary block. This signature needs forensic review. Claudia added that there was no annual recertification, though the trust instrument required one. Mr. Farrow had entered a permanent status code following the merger. One fabricated letter and one temporary one erased me for 9 years, I said. Nobody spoke. The proposed hotel purchase was covered in a separate file. VDM Living had plans to convert a failing roadside hotel into an assisted living facility. An appraisal put the property's value at $2.1 million. The trust was being asked to pay $4.7 million for it to a seller connected to Portia's brother. Adrian's plan would have funneled more than twice the property's worth to his own family, then build my trust to keep me there. This is why he needs the guardianship now. Burton said the closing deadline is Monday. Without documented authority, the seller may pull out or bring the arrangement to light. The compliance officer slid a form toward me. Mr. Callahan, this is a request to suspend all distributions aside from essential direct expenses while the bank investigates. You are entitled to sign it once you understand its effect. I read every word, then described back to him what it would do before I signed. Claudia watched closely. She was already thinking like a witness. One more thing she said. At 11:43 last night, someone tried to access your online account from an address tied to Vale Management. The password was changed, but the multi-factor prompt went to a number ending in Adrian's digits. Did he get in? No, we cut off electronic access after your fraud report. My own phone vibrated. Adrian had sent 6 messages. Dad, I know you're confused. Burton is manipulating you. Suzanne has always been after Mom's money. Please come home and we can talk in private. You are putting the whole family at risk. If you love us, don't do anything before Sunday dinner. That last message stayed on my screen the longest. If you love us. Adrian had learned how to turn love into a ledger with only one creditor. There's no Sunday dinner to go, to Suzanne said after reading over my shoulder. I put the phone away. There will be, Burton said with a frown. Gerald. He wants me at his table because he thinks a dinner table turns him back into a son rather than an advisor who robbed a beneficiary. Let him keep believing it will work. That is dangerous. Then we make it useful. Suzanne studied me. You want him to talk. For 9 years, everyone else has been speaking on my behalf. I looked at the 3 binders. I want to hear what he says when he still thinks he can. Burton found a sealed letter tucked in the back of the trust binder. It had no legal force on its own. Loretta had labeled it Guidance for My Family and directed the trustee to distribute copies after her death. Heritage's file showed the letter had been mailed to Adrian's address while I was in rehabilitation. No copy had ever reached Suzanne or me. Burton asked whether I wanted him to read it aloud. He'll read it, I said. Loretta's handwriting had always slanted slightly left, as though each word resisted being rushed. My dear Gurr, if you're reading this, then I have left you with the one task I most wanted us to share. Growing old. I am sorry. I know you will be tempted to give the children whatever they ask, because generosity feels like the easier path when you are lonely. Please remember that our love was never counted in what we gave away. It was measured by what we built together. The shares in this trust came from my father, but their purpose belongs to us. Use them to live freely, repair the house, travel if you wish. Buy the ridiculous fishing boat you always pretended not to want. Help the children when helping them makes them stronger, not when it teaches them to use you. Adrian has ambition and charm. Suzanne has courage and a tongue that outruns her patience. Neither is better loved. One must never hold power over the other. If either one tries pulling you away from the other, stop cold and insist on proof with both of them in the room. Deception takes root where families refuse to face each other directly. I built in strict protections because sorrow strips people of their defenses, and a frightened person becomes easy to steer. Should anyone claim you've lost the ability to speak for yourself, I want your own voice heard first loudly and face to face. Above everything else, never mistake quiet for contentment. Our marriage worked because you grew into someone willing to push back against me. Fight that same way for the life that is yours. All my love, Loretta. I set the letter down, refolded it along its worn lines, and went very still. Suzanne had her face turned to the window. Burton lifted his glasses off and buffed them on his sleeve, though the lenses were spotless. She understood us, Suzanne said, more than we ever understood ourselves. Loretta had written a second page addressed to the trustee. She had asked for a yearly face-to-face meeting with me, conducted without any family present whenever an incapacity advisor was involved. The request carried no legal weight, but Heritage had honored it once. A trust officer came to see me during my recovery. Adrian sat in and fielded most questions himself. The officer's notes described me as cooperative and well-supported. After the merger, nobody came again. At noon, Burton drove me to an independent geriatric specialist at the Medical College of Ohio Hospital. The exam ran nearly 3 hours. I sat through memory tests, reasoning exercises, a medication review, and a driving safety interview. The doctor asked me to hold 5 words in my head, sketch a clock face, explain how bank interest works, and describe the trust dispute in my own terms. He finished and folded his hands. Mr. Callahan, you show normal age-related slowing and mild difficult with delayed recall. Nothing here meets the standard for dementia or impaired decision-making capacity. Put that plainly for a judge, he smiled. I intend to. Burton asked about the post-surgery video. Post-operative delirium is routine, the doctor said, especially after cardiac procedures. A brief clip recorded while a patient is still medicated carries no weight in establishing capacity 9 years on. The written report would be finished by Sunday morning. Back at Burton's office, a courier had already arrived carrying a letter from Adrian's attorney. It ordered me to cut off all contact with the bank, surrender my car keys, and submit to an evaluation by a physician of Adrian's choosing. It also put Burton on notice that continuing to communicate with me could be construed as undue influence. Burton read it through twice. He's trying to reframe everyone in your corner as proof that you're being manipulated. Can he pull that off? He can argue it. That kind of allegation comes up constantly in contested guardianships. Suzanne moved along the bookshelf. Then the bank manager, the inspector, and the doctor will all end up on the stand. Burton said, Monday's hearing may be short. The judge is most likely ruling only on whether emergency protection is needed, while the larger case proceeds. Yet what if she puts Adrian in charge? We push for a neutral professional, but even a court-appointed stranger limits your options, and Adrian uses that window to lean on the bank. Likely? My phone went off. Portia. I answered on speaker after Burton nodded. Gerald, hushed unsteady. Thank God. We've been out of our minds with worry. I'm fine. Adrian said Suzanne pulled you off somewhere. You know she can't be trusted. Suzanne stopped moving. What makes her a danger? I said. Her history. The things people have said. The pain she caused Loretta. Be specific. Portia paused. This is exactly the pattern the doctors warned us about. When you get agitated, you fixate. Which doctors? Gerald, please, we love you. Then pull the petition. A shaky exhale. We can't. Not while you're making financial moves that make no sense, blocking the purchase of an old hotel for $4.7 million. Silence on the line. When Portia came back, all the trembling was gone. Who told you that? Is this hotel meant to benefit me? It's an investment. Adrian has spent 2 years building a safe environment for seniors. You'd have a private suite, medical support, everything. The property is worth $2.1 million. Appraisals vary, and a family connection doesn't make a deal improper. Hiding one does. Her voice dropped. You need to be careful, Gerald. Adrian has shielded you from things that would be too much to absorb. If you drag it all into the open, you may not like what surfaces. Is that a warning? It's concern. It always is. I ended the call. Burton secured the recording. In our state, any party to a conversation may legally record it without disclosure. I was that party. Suzanne looked shaken. She always knew which words would stop you because you showed her the playbook. How so? Anytime she said she was worried, I quit asking questions. I told myself that was the decent thing to do as a father-in-law. After Loretta was gone, I was just grateful Portia kept me in the picture. I thought back over every gathering Portia had arranged, holidays, dinner reservations, birthday cards bearing all our names. I had taken it for quiet competence. Now I found myself wondering how many of those evenings I had quietly bankrolled. Burton lifted Loretta's letter. There's a sharper provision in the trust, Article 11. If an advisor operates in bad faith, hiding the trust from the beneficiary, or drawing on trust assets for personal gain, that advisor is removed. If the same advisor stands to inherit under the trust, the law treats them as having predeceased you. Adrian would receive nothing. Only after due process. The corporate trustee or a court has to establish bad faith. Does Adrian know a copy of the trust went to him? Suzanne shook her head. He probably assumes nobody can link him to intent. Every withdrawal just looks like another bill for Dad's care. I read Loretta's words one final time. Help the children when help builds them up, not when it trains them to take from you. So, Sunday dinner isn't really about extracting a confession, I said. It's about making him account for what he concealed. Burton saw it. Concealment. 87 signed certifications prove the money. I want his own words to prove the choice. Adrian's house sat on a private lane above the Finley Country Club. Limestone columns out front, a heated driveway, windows that reached like a cathedral's. He once told me the mortgage was a strain, and I'd handed him $40,000 from what I believed was my last investment account to help with the down payment. The trust accounting told a different story. The house had been bought without any mortgage at all. Burton objected to me walking in alone. Suzanne objected with more force. We settled on a compromise. I wore a small recording device clipped flat inside my shirt. Burton sat at a diner 6 minutes away. Suzanne stayed at her place with Eli. If I hadn't called by 8:30, Burton would come. I arrived at 6:00. Portia had the door open before I could ring, cream sweater, an expression of worn-through devotion. "Oh, Gerald," she pulled me in. One hand traveled slowly across my back, passing right over where the recorder sat, but it was too small to detect through my coat. "Come inside. You must be freezing." Adrian was at the fireplace. He carried himself the way he had at 35, assured, composed, the kind of looks that made people want to give him the benefit of the doubt. My favorite bourbon was already open on the bar. "Dad," he came toward me carefully, the way you'd approach something that might startle. "I'm glad you came. You asked me to. I've been calling. I know." His eyes drifted to the driveway. "Did Suzanne bring you?" "I drove." Something in his expression shifted. Your license may be temporarily suspended if the petition goes through. Then I'll use it while I still can. Portia laughed a half beat too soon. Let's leave court talk out of the dining room. 3-place settings, and at the center of the table, Loretta's silver candlesticks. I hadn't laid eyes on them since the funeral. Those belong to your mother, I said. Adrian followed my gaze. You passed some things along when you downsized. I never downsized. After surgery, Dad, you don't remember. A small lie measured against millions, but it held the whole structure in place. Every time I pushed back, the narrative recast it as confusion. I sat down. Maybe walk me through it. Dinner came, roast beef, potatoes, wine. Portia refilled my glass twice before I'd finished half of it. I moved to water. For 20 minutes they staged an ordinary evening. Adrian talked about a commercial project. Portia complained about holiday traffic. They asked whether I was sleeping well, whether I'd taken my evening medication. Nobody mentioned the trust. I set down my fork. Why did you tell me Loretta's estate was gone? Adrian looked at Portia, then back at me. It was complicated. Simplify it. Mom's shares went into a trust. 9 years ago, you weren't in a position to manage things. Your condition didn't recover the way we'd hoped. I live alone, drive, cook, volunteer at the Rail Museum, and file my own taxes. With help. Whose idea was the $31,000 monthly fee for Portia's company? Portia's expression went hard. Adrian laid a hand over hers. Wyndham coordinates your care, he said. Name 3 things it did for me last month. This isn't an audit. At my table it is. Adrian leaned back. This is our table. There it was. Not anger. Ownership plain and cold. I let the silence sit. When did you decide I no longer deserved the truth? Dad, you fell apart after Mom died. Mail piled up unopened. You'd call me in the middle of the night, barely holding together. I was grieving. You were incapable. What I was about to learn about the years behind me and about the person I had trusted most would be the hardest thing I had ever had to hold. Before we get there, tell me this. If you discovered that someone close to you had been quietly working against you, would you confront them the moment you knew, or would you gather every piece of proof first and say nothing? How long had this been going on? He pressed 2 fingers to his forehead. This is exactly why we kept the balance from you. Numbers become an obsession. The moment you knew, you'd have been handing it out. To whom, Suzanne? Besides that, trust belongs to both of you equally, after I'm gone. On paper. What is that supposed to mean? Portia cut in. Suzanne walked away from you. Adrian gave up years of his life at $31,000 a month. Do you have any idea what professional care actually costs? She turned sharp. Do you have any idea how many appointments, crises, and midnight phone calls we handled? I had 3 medical appointments last year. I scheduled 2 myself. Adrian's voice went quiet. That's enough. Not yet, I said. Did you tamper with Suzanne's emails? He met my eyes without flinching. She's working to poison you against us. Did you block her calls? She was harassing you. Did you write a letter in my name, ordering Burton to stay away? You asked me to handle it. Did I? Something snapped in Adrian the first time I had ever witnessed it. His palm cracked down on the table. The silverware jumped. You were the one begging me to make it stop. He said Mom was gone. You had nothing left to offer. Suzanne was waving lawsuits around. Bills covered every surface. I kept everything from collapsing while you sat in that house talking to a woman 2 years in the ground. Those words didn't lift. They sat over the table like a weight. I thought about the times I'd spoken to Loretta after the funeral. There were moments even now when I still did. Grief wasn't proof that my mind was going. It was proof I had loved her. So, you lied, I said. Adrian got up and moved to the fireplace. I made the decisions that needed making. Someone had to. But when I came back to myself, you kept me where you'd placed me, on the word of a neurologist I had never laid eyes on. His shoulders went rigid. Dr. Orozco, I said. Does that name mean anything to you? Portia rose from her chair. This is finished. Sit down, Adrian said to her. She held the silence a moment, then lowered herself back. Adrian turned to face me. The trust company was demanding documentation. The cardiologist's letter on its own wasn't going to satisfy them. So, where did the second letter actually come? From a consultant arranged an evaluation. There was no evaluation. You don't remember it. How convenient. Color rose in his face. Do you honestly believe the bank hands over $28 million because you walked in asking about a furnace? There are hearings ahead, expert witnesses, years of this eating through the courts. Every peculiar thing you've done will be put on display. Every name that slipped your mind every time you got turned around, every word you said to Mom after she was buried. You recorded me in the hospital, I said. I documented your condition. You were building a case from the very beginning. I was holding this family together. I took in the room, its scale the imported stonework, my wife's candlesticks on the sideboard. You held it together very comfortably. Portia drew a folder from the vacant chair at her side. There's a way through this that doesn't wound anyone. 4 documents were inside. The first committed me to voluntary residence at Ridgecroft Senior Living. The second established Adrian as permanent financial agent. The third released Vail Management from any and all claims. The fourth directed the bank to approve the hotel investment. You brought me here to sign these, I said. We brought you here so you wouldn't have to face a courtroom, Portia answered. Adrian moved his chair alongside mine and lowered his voice. A court-appointed guardian, a complete stranger decides where you live. Legal costs will hollow out the trust. Suzanne won't quit until nothing is left for anyone. Sign tonight and your life continues as it is, except you're somewhere warm with people looking after you. Nothing changes, I repeated. You'd have the finest suite at Ridgecroft. We'd be there every week. You come twice a month now, and only because I make things difficult. He said it softly. That made it land harder. I picked up a pen. Adrian and Portia exchanged a look. I have one condition. The trust pays Suzanne $200,000 to drop the challenge. Something in Adrian's face eased with relief. That's a conversation for later. Put it in writing now. Tonight is about your care. Then I won't sign. Portia was on her feet again. For God's sake, Gerald, after everything we've sacrificed. Adrian raised a hand. Fine. We'll draw up a separate distribution request. He went to his office and returned with a laptop. Portia hovered at his shoulder while he typed. I rotated the documents to the signature lines. My old railroad foreman had one rule he pressed into every man on his crew: never sign off on a safety inspection. You hadn't run yourself. A signature is a piece of your life, he used to tell us. Don't leave it somewhere. Another person can put it to work. I wrote Gerald Colton in place of Gerald Callahan on every line, disguising the middle name beneath a deliberate loop. From across the table, it looked right. Every document was now void. Adrian printed the distribution request. It promised $200,000 to Suzanne against a signed waiver. I put Gerald Colton there as well. He gathered the papers at once. I'd like copies, I said. Our attorney will have them sent over shortly. Portia moved toward me across the room. You're tired and you're blocking the door. She went still. Adrian looked between us. For a moment I saw something in his face that was not worry about my health. It was the fear of a man who realizes he has been read. He made copies at the front door, then placed a hand on my shoulder. You made the right call, Dad. Did I once the hotel situation closes out everything steadies? You'll see. And the bank hold. His grip tightened. The court order resolves that tomorrow. You sound very sure. I have the truth. I looked at my son, the boy I raised, to believe cheating was wrong, even with no one watching. So do I. I pulled out at 8:17. Burton was waiting in the diner lot. I passed him the copies and the recorder. Did you sign? He demanded. Gerald Colton signed. Burton stared, then released one short laugh. Loretta used to bring that name out when she was furious with you. Adrian never caught on to it. We sat in Burton's car and played back the recording. The sharpest moment was Adrian acknowledging that the trust company had needed documentation beyond the cardiologist's letter. Not a direct admission of forgery, but proof enough that he knew the permanent incapacity finding required more than existed, and he had provided it anyway. Burton clicked it off. This helps. Will it be enough tomorrow? His face settled into something serious. Morning will tell us. The courthouse carried the smell of floor wax and wet coats. Every bench outside the probate courtroom was taken well before 8:30 Monday morning. Certain families kept their voices low and leaned together. Others had settled at opposite ends of the corridor and looked past one another. Adrian came in with Portia and 2 attorneys. Dark blue suit leather portfolio. Portia had dressed without ornament, only her wedding ring. They had styled themselves to look burdened, not prosperous. Adrian came toward me. Dad, you don't belong here. This is a hearing about my life. This is Burton's play for a public spectacle. Burton moved between us. All communication runs through counsel. Adrian's attorney smiled pleasantly. Mr. Alcott, your prior work on behalf of the trust may present a conflict of interest. Bring the motion, Burton said. Suzanne emerged from the metal detector at the far end of the hall. When Adrian spotted her, his composed expression dissolved. "You arranged for her to be here," he said to me. "She came on her own." The presiding judge was a woman in her 60s, Constance Rafferty. She took the bench without ceremony and moved directly into the matter. Adrian's attorney sought emergency guardianship, arguing that outside manipulation had led me to block necessary care and endanger my assets. He led with the hospital footage. On the courtroom screen, I looked ashen and swollen. Tubes ran across my chest. My eyelids worked at staying open. A younger Adrian's voice came through. "Dad, do you know where you are?" "Union Station," I mumbled. "Do you know who I am?" "Harold," I said. Harold was my brother gone since 1997. At the counsel table, Adrian kept his gaze fixed downward as if the footage was too painful to face. His attorney then presented the furnace photograph, the scorched kettle, the accumulated mail, and a brief clip of me in my front yard 6 months earlier, questioning a delivery driver about his business there. The driver had the wrong address. The footage ended before that became apparent. "Mr. Callahan shows intervals of apparent clarity," the attorney told the court. "But this condition does not present uniformly. His son has quietly absorbed the gaps to protect his dignity." Into evidence went a letter from Dr. Brennan, noting my sporadic forgetfulness and anxiety. It fell short of diagnosing dementia, but Adrian's attorney extracted each hedged line as though it did. Then Adrian testified. He described my grief following Loretta's death, finding me asleep in a chair with the front door standing open, a missed appointment. The same question asked twice in one evening. Some of it was stretched beyond what happened. Some of it was accurate. The mixture was what made him believable. "I don't want control," he said, his voice fraying at exactly the right beat. "I want my father safe. If the court appoints someone else, I'll accept it. I simply cannot watch while others take advantage of his confusion." His gaze moved to Suzanne. Burton cross-examined him. "How much in total has Vail Management drawn from the Loretta Callahan Trust?" Adrian's attorney objected financial matters were outside an emergency proceeding. Judge Rafferty permitted a narrow response. Adrian said he didn't carry the exact figure. Portia handled the company's accounts. "More than $2 million," Burton asked, "possibly spread across many years. Professional care carries real costs. Did Vail personally provide daily bathing assistance? Various staff and contractors covered those functions. Name one." The objection came again. Judge Rafferty told Burton to move along. "Did you know the furnace had been manually disabled? Something crossed Adrian's face there and gone in under a second? No. How did you get inside Gerald's house on Friday morning? I have a key for emergencies. Did you open the furnace panel? Absolutely not. Did your wife know? Did anyone from Vail Management touch it? Not that I'm aware of." Burton entered Chet's report and photographs of the reconnected switch into evidence, then put the independent geriatric specialist on by video. That doctor was unambiguous, full decision-making capacity, no clinical dementia. Adrian's attorney went after the brief evaluation, arguing that a sharp person can mask cognitive deficits when testing is structured. Claudia took the stand next. She walked through my loan application, my questions, and the fraud alert. "I read the hold authorization aloud and made sure he understood it before he signed," she said. "Was Mr. Callahan caught off guard when he learned the trust existed?" Burton let the surprise register before pressing further. "Is it reasonable for the primary beneficiary of a $28 million trust to have been kept entirely in the dark?" Adrian's attorney objected. Sustained. Suzanne was the final witness on our side. She laid out the forged emails and the blocked contact. Adrian's attorney recast her as a bitter daughter, counting on a large inheritance. He produced an old message she'd written. "If Adrian gets away with this, I will see him in court, even if it takes everything." "You wanted control of the trust, didn't you?" he pressed. "No, you were the alternate advisor. I asked the corporate trustee to bring in a neutral professional. But if your father dies, you inherit." Suzanne held my gaze before responding. "My fear was that my father would go to his grave, thinking I had turned on my mother. That false version had to be corrected." Saturday was the first time I heard the trust was worth $28 million. Judge Rafferty called a recess. Burton and I sat in a narrow conference room. He cautioned me that emergency proceedings tend toward restraint. Holding the status quo was the most likely outcome. The status quo means Adrian running my life. I know. Back in the courtroom, Judge Rafferty chose her words carefully. She found strong evidence that I held capacity at this time. Yet she also identified real concerns warranting closer investigation, inconsistent medical records, competing family allegations, and a substantial trust with unresolved disputes. She denied Adrian's bid for permanent authority. In its place, she installed a temporary professional guardian for 14 days scope, confined to major medical and residential matters. She barred all parties, including me, from altering my residence selling property or authorizing trust distributions above $10,000 before a full hearing. The ruling blocked my return to Ridgecroft Senior Living. It held the $4.7 million frozen and set a stranger between me and every significant decision. Adrian's face fell, but only for a moment. His attorney murmured in his ear, and something like relief followed. The judge had left him in place as distribution advisor, referring that question to the trust division for a separate proceeding. In the corridor, Adrian caught up with me near the elevators. "You see what Suzanne set in motion. A stranger holds temporary control over you. 14 days is enough to unravel everything. The hotel deal will fall through. Investors will come after us. Us." He caught the slip. The trust. That's what I meant. The elevator came. "You signed the consent last night," he said, lowering his voice. "Denying it now only confirms the instability they were worried about. Look at the signature." Something in his manner faltered. "Calton," I said. "Your mother's word for me whenever I tracked mud across her kitchen floor. The doors slid shut between us." "You deceive me," he said. "No, son. I finally read every word of what you handed me." The court's appointed guardian was Dorothea Greer. That afternoon, she came to the house, went through each room, reviewed my prescriptions, and had me prepare a meal while she observed. I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. "Is this your usual lunch?" she asked. "When someone is here to assess whether I can manage a meal," she almost smiled. "Fair enough." Dorothea wasn't in Adrian's corner, but professional caution was her nature. She took my car keys pending a formal driving review and required Burton's clearance before visitors could come by. I had just won the most critical piece of the hearing, yet I felt penalized. That night I stood at the living room window watching snow settle over the road. I held $28 million and lacked permission to drive myself to the grocery store. Wealth was not freedom, control was. Adrian called at 7. Burton had told me not to pick up. I answered anyway. The hotel seller walked away. Adrian said no greeting. "The deposit is gone. Whose deposit? Mine." "Portia's investors. Do you grasp what you've cost us? You blocked a $2 million acquisition that would have fetched $12 million after conversion. Someone else will profit from that." He was breathing hard. "Portia's brother may file for bankruptcy. I'm sorry to hear that. You don't mean it. Suzanne has made you cruel." My eyes went to Loretta's photograph on the mantel. "Did you cut the connection to my furnace? Excuse me?" "You heard what I asked? I did nothing of the kind." "Did Portia?" "That kind of thinking is precisely why Dorothea is here." "What about her brother?" Adrian said nothing. "Good night," he said. "Dad, wait. The bank is pushing to remove me. If they do, they can demand repayment from Vale. We could lose the house." For just a moment, his voice sounded young. I thought of him at 16 coming to tell me he'd scraped a neighbor's car. He'd stood in my workshop, eyes wet, ready to sign over every dollar from that summer's work. "Be honest," I said now. "Give back what you took. Start there." "You think it's that simple?" "No, I think it was simple 9 years ago." He ended the call. By morning, the story was online. Local retirees' fortune becomes center of family capacity fight. An unnamed source told the outlet I had been manipulated by an estranged daughter after learning of an inheritance. Adrian was portrayed as a devoted caregiver. My post-operative confusion was noted. Before noon, 2 television vans had positioned themselves near the courthouse. Burton was certain Adrian's PR consultant had fed the story to the press. Proving it was another matter. The Rail Museum, where I volunteered every Wednesday, the director phoned and gently suggested a leave of absence. "Just until the noise dies down," he said kindly. A neighbor arrived with a casserole and was gone in under 5 minutes. A camera crew had set up across the street. My private grief had become a public spectacle. Suzanne had it worse. Strangers sent messages branding her a gold digger. Her employer's address was posted online. Bowling Green State University placed her on paid leave while reviewing whether the coverage jeopardized her counseling position. "I'm sorry," I told her on the phone. "Stop apologizing for what he does. You and Eli are paying for my mistakes. Then help me end it." That afternoon, Claudia called with news that landed like another defeat. Dwight Farrow, the trust's former officer, had died 11 months earlier. The man who had approved most of Adrian's requests could not testify. Bank records showed that several original supporting documents had been discarded under a routine retention schedule following digitization. The digital files held the questionable neurologist's letter, but not the envelope or any transmission record. Dr. Orozco existed. He had retired and gone abroad. His former office had no record of treating me, and anything older than 7 years had been purged. Adrian will claim the file was lost, Burton said. The signature may be a forgery, but without a specimen or a witness establishing who produced it will be very difficult. We have the wire transfers. He'll argue they were fair compensation approved by an independent trustee. The recording helped. It did not prove intent. Then Dorothea called. Adrian had filed a motion claiming Burton and Suzanne had pressured me to revise my estate plan. Until the full hearing, Dorothea asked that I execute no new legal documents except through court-approved counsel. Burton is my attorney. She said the court may need to examine whether his prior involvement creates a conflict. Adrian wants him disqualified. I understand your concern. Concern the word people reach for while gently closing a door. That evening, Burton came to the house with boxes from his archive. Should the judge remove me, another attorney will need everything in order. We build the record now. We worked through correspondence from Loretta's final year. Around 10 hours, I came across a yellow note in her handwriting, clipped to an early draft of the trust. Ask Bernard's old accountant about Adrian's proposal. Jur must be told alongside Suzanne. No private conversations on the side. What proposal, I asked. Burton searched the surrounding files. Nothing. Suzanne, watching by video, went very still when she saw the note. I remember, she said. Adrian wanted Mom to shift the prior shares into a private investment vehicle he was putting together. She refused. Why, she said it was carrying far too much debt. A week later, Adrian told me she had changed her mind. That was when I emailed him to stop pressuring her. Burton checked his calendar from that period. Bernard's old accountant was Wendell Crane, dead 5 years now. Another witness we'll never hear from. Did he have a firm, I asked. He'd sold it before retirement. Suzanne leaned toward her camera. What about Mom's laptop? I looked toward the hall closet. Adrian collected it after the funeral, saying he needed it for tax records. Did he take everything? Her desktop went to recycling. The laptop went with him. Suzanne shook her head. Mom backed up her photographs. Losing them was something she couldn't bear. There was a small black device Loretta used to plug into her computer each Sunday night. After she passed, I packed it away with her camera gear in a cedar chest. Adrian had cleared out the office, but photography never interested him. The chest was up in the attic. Burton phoned Dorothea for clearance before I went up. She wouldn't allow it without someone present. Burton waited at the foot of the stairs while I worked the dusty chest down, one step at a time. Inside 2 camera bodies, lenses, instruction booklets, and 3 portable hard drives bundled in a dish towel. The first held photographs. The second held photographs and household records. The third was locked. Suzanne tried Loretta's birthday. Nothing. My birthday, nothing. Their wedding anniversary, nothing. I checked the hint field, the safest investment. The house. I said it aloud. I typed the street number and Loretta's private name for our home. 418 Elmwood Drive. The drive opened. Folders spread across the screen. Taxes hail, shares trust. Drafts medical records. One folder labeled Adrian Proposal held scanned pages, emails, and an audio file, dated 6 weeks before Loretta died. I hit play. Shuffling at first, then Loretta's voice thin and worn. I'm recording because I'm sick of being told I got it wrong. Adrian responded, Mom, nobody is saying that. You asked me to sign the partnership papers after Jur had gone to the pharmacy. Because he gets emotional where money is concerned. It is our money. It's Hale money. Grandpa intended it to build something, not sit idle in a trust collecting dividends. Your grandfather intended it to protect his family. A chair scraped. Adrian's tone went cold. Suzanne has been working to turn Dad against me. Give her equal authority and she will tear everything apart. As long as Jur is alive, neither of you controls this. He can't manage it. He can manage himself. Not once you're gone. Loretta fell quiet. When she spoke again, each word landed with deliberate weight. If you ever use my death to strip your father of his footing, you will lose far more than this money. You will lose him. The recording stopped. Nobody in the living room moved. Loretta had seen Adrian's scheme before it unfolded and had already named what it would cost him. Burton burned 3 copies of the hard drive before dawn. One went into his office safe. One went to the bank's forensic team. Dorothea took the original into custody and signed a receipt naming everyone who'd touched it. Adrian's attorney objected immediately. He alleged the recording could have been doctored and maintained that a private exchange between a dying woman and her son had no bearing on my current mental state. He wasn't entirely wrong on the narrow point. The recording alone didn't establish every transaction. What it did was recolor all the other evidence. Long before Loretta died, Adrian had been arguing I was unfit to oversee the trust. He had moved to shift the Hale shares into a partnership under his sole direction. He had started cutting Suzanne out before grief or my surgery could absorb the blame. What once appeared to be a string of well-meaning decisions that happened to serve his interests now had a different shape. It had an origin. The hard drive kept giving. Loretta had scanned the full partnership proposal. Adrian wanted the trust to pour nearly all of its Hale shares into Callahan Strategic Partners. The structure handed him broad authority to borrow against those assets and carved out a 2% annual management fee. Loretta had stamped declined across every page. Then there was an email Adrian fired off 3 days after her refusal. "Yeah, Mom, if you lock the shares away with Dad as beneficiary, you are handing a loaded weapon to a man who cannot balance a checkbook. When he fails, do not expect me to clean it up for free." Burton read the line twice. "For free?" Suzanne nodded. That was when Vail began billing the trust. Digging through its own archives, the bank's forensic team surfaced a fourth discovery. Dwight Farrow, the now deceased trust officer, had signed off on the first Vail contract after taking what he called a business development loan from VDM Holdings. The figure was $180,000. No payment ever followed, and the debt quietly dropped off VDM's books 18 months later. "A bribe," I said. Claudia was more measured. "It presents as an undisclosed financial conflict. Investigators will assign the label." Farrow had also manually overridden 3 automated alerts. One flagged that Vail's registered address matched Adrian's correspondence address. A second flagged the volume of the monthly fees. The third noted that annual medical recertification was past due. He dismissed each one with identical language. Advisor confirms continuing incapacity. Beneficiary contact would cause distress. Adrian's name sat beside every confirmation. The trust committee suspended him that afternoon. Under an emergency provision, no family member stepped in. A senior bank fiduciary took over as temporary advisor pending court review. At 4:00, Dorothea returned my car keys. "I've completed the home and medical review," she said. "Nothing I've found warrants limiting your ordinary daily decisions. I'll recommend that the temporary guardianship end at the full hearing." I turned the keys slowly in my hand. "Thank you. You don't owe gratitude to someone giving back a right that was wrongly stripped from you. You complied with the order." I did. Her eyes moved to Loretta's photograph on the wall. "And I took something away from this. Professional caution is a genuine safeguard until it quietly becomes its own kind of control by never asking what the person actually wants." For the first time since walking into that bank, I felt solid ground under my feet. Then a sheriff's detective rang Burton. The bank's elder exploitation report had been forwarded to a financial crimes unit. They were asking for interviews and access to the financial records. Criminal investigators now had Adrian and Portia in view. Suzanne thought I'd be relieved. I wasn't. I crossed to the kitchen sink and stood facing the window, my back to the room. "Dad, I understand what he did. What's wrong?" When Adrian was 5, he took $3 from Loretta's purse. He spent it on candy and handed it out to every kid on our block. When we sat him down, he wept, convinced that the gesture canceled out the theft. I pressed my hands to the counter's edge. I made him return what was left and work off the difference. Loretta told him that good intentions don't wash a wrong act clean. Suzanne waited quietly. I believed he'd absorbed that lesson. Perhaps he had at the time. "Where did I lose him?" "You didn't cause this." "No. But I let him grow up thinking that being relied on gave him license." Suzanne moved to stand alongside me. "And you raised me to think that my anger made me someone you could write off." I faced her. "If we're serious about repairing any of this," she said, "we can't package the hard truths in soft words." "That's fair. Adrian made his choices. You made yours. I made mine. Mom couldn't have stopped us even if she'd been here." A sad, hollow laugh escaped me. She certainly gave it her best effort. Suzanne's gaze went to the photograph. Yes, she did. A notification lit up my phone, not a call, but a message from Portia. A photo. Adrian sitting alone in a dark kitchen, face buried in his hands. He hasn't slept. If you keep pushing, I'm afraid of what he'll do. Burton said to leave it alone. I wrote back 3 words. Call a doctor. I didn't ring the bank. I didn't put money on the table. I didn't agree to drop the case. Genuine worry doesn't require surrender. Portia came to my door Thursday morning without Adrian. She stood on the porch wearing a gray coat, Loretta's silver candlesticks tucked in a shopping bag. A news camera was still posted at the corner, so I called Burton first, then let her in. He listened by speakerphone. Portia pushed back, then relented when I held the door open to signal she could leave. She set the candlesticks on the kitchen table. These are yours. They always were. Adrian said you gave them to us. Did you believe that she opened her coat but stayed standing? In the beginning, I accepted what he told me. When did you stop, Gerald? I came here to make this right. Without the composed expression she maintained in court, she looked every year of her age. I knew the care report stretched the truth about what we actually did. Adrian said it was unavoidable because the trust would only cover formally documented services. We handled your bills, the house, the medical side. He said the fee reflected being on call, $31,000 every month. The amount kept rising. It didn't start that high. The first payment was $18,000. She glanced at the speakerphone. You already know all of it, Burton's voice came through. We have the records. We're offering you the chance to speak to Mr. Callahan directly. Portia sat down at last. Adrian's business was underwater when Loretta got sick. He'd signed personal guarantees. If the lenders moved, they'd lose the house, and he'd lose his license. He was convinced those Hale shares were rightfully his. Loretta disagreed. The shares were hers, I said. She didn't build that company, and neither did Adrian. Portia pressed her lips into a line. After your surgery, Dwight walked Adrian through how the advisor provision functioned. Dwight wanted a cut. Adrian ran the payments to him through the development company. Who drafted the neurologist's letter? Burton asked. Her eyes went to the table. Portia, I said. Dwight supplied a template. Adrian filled in the particulars. The kitchen felt like it was closing in. And Dr. Orozco's signature. I never watched Adrian put his name to it. That isn't what I asked. He copied a genuine signature off a seminar certificate. Dwight told him no one would look closely. The cardiologist's report already established temporary incapacity, and the trust only needed the second letter for the file. Burton kept his voice level. Are you willing to give a sworn statement? Portia turned toward me. Only if Gerald drops any claims against me. That was the offer on the table. What was your role? I asked. Vale was my company, but Adrian steered every trust request. Your name is on the monthly reports. He was the one feeding me the figures. You wrote that you gave me baths. Color flooded her face. Those were standard billing categories. You put in writing that I couldn't dress myself while I spent my Wednesdays under a museum locomotive replacing brake lines. I wasn't aware of what I was signing. You were aware enough to charge for it. Portia reached into her bag and produced a flash drive. Internal emails, invoices, voice messages all on here. The furnace work order is on there too. Something gave way inside me then. What work order? Adrian told my brother to make the house appear dangerous before the petition. Documenting neglected maintenance was the pretense. My brother pulled the switch himself. He claimed it wouldn't cause real harm. You took photographs of the thermostat. She didn't dispute it. You left the Ridgecroft contract where I'd see it. The judge needed to believe a safe option was ready. You manufactured a hazard in my home to prove I should be removed from it. Monday was the hotel closing. If the deal collapsed, everything fell with it. I rose and went to the window. A thin layer of snow lay on the porch rail, the one Loretta repainted every 3 summers. Adrian and Portia had whittled my life down to a series of problems standing between them and a deadline. What do you want from this? I asked. Safety. I'll return the jewelry, the cars, everything still sitting in Vale's accounts. And my share of the house. I'll go on record that Adrian ran the whole operation. And you expect me to call you another victim? He deceived me as well. Did he compel you to disconnect the furnace? No. Did he compel you to put your name on 84 care reports? No. Did he force you to block the doorway on Sunday night? She started crying. Whether those tears were genuine, I wasn't sure. No, she whispered. Then I'm not going to purchase your honesty by telling one more lie. She slid the flash drive toward me. Hold on to it. If there's evidence there, pass it to your attorney and the investigators. Burton can take care of the arrangements. I came here because I thought you'd want a deal. Portia's gaze drifted to the family photographs hanging on the wall. Adrian was convinced you'd pardon him. He always believed a father shields his son in the end. For a long time, he was right. What shifted, I came to understand that Protecting someone and sparing them consequences are two different things. She left the drive where it sat and walked out, leaving the candlesticks behind. Burton stayed on the line without a word until her car had gone. "Don't handle the drive," he said. "I'll send someone to collect it. Will her statement factor in? That's for others to decide. Prosecutors may offer her something in exchange, but we have no part in making that promise." I picked one candlestick out of the bag. Wax from Loretta's last Christmas was still pooled in the base. "Burton," I said, "I don't feel like I've won." "Good," he replied quietly. "Winning is for contests. This is accountability." The consolidated hearing opened 13 days after my visit to the bank. The trust dispute and the guardianship case were joined for the first time. The room was larger, and not one seat was empty. Judge Rafferty barred cameras, though reporters packed the corridor outside. Adrian came alone, no Portia. He looked gaunt. He had let his original attorneys go and brought in criminal defense counsel, plus a separate probate lawyer. Portia sat across the aisle with her own representation. The bank sought Adrian's permanent removal, recovery of improper distributions, and enforcement of Article 11's forfeiture provision. Burton petitioned to dissolve the guardianship and fully restore my rights. Suzanne wanted only one thing acknowledged: the documents bearing her name were fabricated. Adrian fought everything. His tactics had evolved. He had stopped denying every irregularity. His new story was that Dwight Farrow had constructed the entire arrangement. Portia handled the administration, and he had simply trusted professionals while looking after a vulnerable father. He conceded he'd withheld financial information from me, but framed it as kindness. Claudia testified, first tracing for the court the account discrepancy that surfaced during my loan application. The bank's forensic accountant came next. His charts were straightforward. They mapped money, leaving the trust and arriving at Vail VDM, the dealership, the private club, and travel vendors. He documented the $180,000 extended to Farrow and the debt that was later erased. Then Chet laid out the furnace. A work order from Portia's company, retrieved from the drive, directed a contractor to shut off the heat, pending a safety-based placement 2 days before the guardianship petition was filed. Portia had also texted her brother, "Need house under 50 by Friday morning. Make it reversible." Adrian's attorney objected that his client hadn't authored it. Burton concurred. Portia sent it. Nobody is arguing otherwise. He then put Adrian's own message on the screen sent to Portia the previous evening. "Judge needs visual proof. Dad can't remain there. Have your brother handle VC when Dad goes to breakfast." Adrian watched the screen. His expression gave nothing away. The geriatric specialist returned to explain the distinctions between grief and decline, between post-surgical confusion and lasting impairment, between ordinary aging and dementia. Dorothea detailed my daily functioning across her 14-day engagement and called for the guardianship to end immediately. "Mr. Callahan has no need of a substitute decision-maker. He required honest information and freedom from interference," she said. Suzanne took the stand next. Adrian's attorney came at her with noticeably less aggression. A digital forensics expert had already confirmed the altered emails originated from a spoofed address tied to a recovery number linked to Adrian's former business. Suzanne spoke about her years of lost contact and raising Eli's with no grandfather present. No embellishment, no appeal for sympathy. Her steadiness landed harder than any outburst would have. Portia testified under a cooperation agreement, one that fell well short of immunity. She acknowledged false care reports, her role in the furnace scheme, and assisting Adrian in preparing the Sunday dinner documents. She confirmed Adrian had drafted the forged medical letter from Dwight Farrow's template. On cross-examination, Adrian's lawyer surfaced the fact that Portia was angling for reduced charges and intended to divorce Adrian. "You will say anything to save yourself, won't you?" he pressed. Portia met his eyes. I said, "Whatever saved me for 9 years. Today I'm saying what condemns me too." Burton then summoned Adrian. Adrian invoked his right to silence on anything potentially self-incriminating. In a criminal setting, no inference could be drawn from that. But the guardianship proceeding was also a civil trust matter, and the judge was entitled to weigh the existing record without his account. Burton played the Sunday dinner recording. Adrian's voice carried through the room. The trust company needed documentation. The cardiologist's letter wasn't enough. Then came Loretta's recording. "If you ever use my death to make your father feel helpless, you will lose more than this money. You will lose him." Adrian closed his eyes. Then I was called to the stand. Burton opened with routine questions. Work history, pension medications, the furnace, the loan, Claudia's office, the figure on the screen. What ran through your mind when you discovered the trust held more than $28 million, he asked. My first thought was that a clerical error had been made. Were you pleased? No. Why not? Because the branch manager looked frightened on my behalf. He moved to my reliance on Adrian. I answered truthfully even where the truth reflected poorly on me. After Loretta died, mail piled up, unopened. I telephoned Adrian in tears more than once. I missed appointments, left the kettle burning, while I wandered off to check on her belongings. Do any of those things indicate incapacity? Yo, they indicate I am human and 72. Several people in the courtroom shifted. What made you trust Adrian so fully? He was my son. He remained nearby. Each time he lifted a choice from my shoulders, he had a name for it: help. Had you consented to his oversight of the trust, I had no knowledge the trust existed. Had you approved the payments to Vale? No. Did you wish to be placed at Ridgecroft? No. Then what do you want? I looked at Judge Rafferty. My keys, my house, my statements, my right to reach a sound conclusion or a foolish one without having grief converted into a clinical finding. I want my daughter's name restored. I want the trust overseen by people whose pay is transparent and whose conduct is monitored. And I want my son to stop dressing control up as love. Burton sat. Adrian's attorney stepped up. He asked whether I still talked to Loretta's photograph. I said, yes, you understand your wife is dead every minute of every day. Yet you talk to her. Sometimes the dead are easier to trust than the living. The judge glanced downward, concealing something perhaps. The attorney confirmed that Suzanne had been with me several days each week. Yes. That she stood to inherit under the original trust. Yes. Whether I meant to reward her. I stated that no changes to the estate had been made while proceedings were active, but you could make them. I could equally put everything into the absurd fishing boat Loretta always pressed me to purchase. Soft laughter spread through the room. Even Judge Rafferty let a brief smile through before restoring order. The attorney's final question was the one Adrian had designed the whole case to land. Mr. Callahan, isn't it true that without your son's involvement, your finances, your health care, and your property would have collapsed into disorder after your wife was gone? I turned it over in my mind for a moment. Yes, I said. He was there for me when I had nothing left. That is precisely why what followed was possible. A stranger at the door would never have gotten in. My son already had a key. He had no more questions. Judge Rafferty called a recess. We sat for nearly 2 hours. When she returned, she delivered her ruling from the bench. She found clear and convincing evidence that I had capacity and that guardianship was not warranted. The temporary order was lifted at once. She found that Adrian had acted in bad faith, withheld material information, engaged in self-dealing, and weaponized a false incapacity proceeding to keep control. He was permanently stripped of every trust role. Under Article 11, he was treated as having predeceased me for the purposes of the remainder. He would receive nothing from Loretta's trust. The bank was directed to produce a full accounting, pursue recovery, and develop a restitution plan. All disputed assets acquired by Vale or VDM were made subject to preservation orders. The court referred its findings to the district attorney and the state elder protection agency. Judge Rafferty did not appoint Suzanne as advisor. Instead, she approved my request for an independent 3-person trust committee, 1 professional fiduciary, 1 accountant, and 1 elder law advocate. Any distribution above $100,000 would require written notice to me and unanimous approval until the civil recovery was complete. Then the judge turned her gaze directly on Adrian. Mr. Callahan, guardianship is among the gravest powers a court can extend. It exists to preserve human dignity, not to turn vulnerability into a means of access. Your father's age did not place his rights up for negotiation. Adrian lowered his head. The gavel came down once. My life was mine again. Adrian waited outside the courtroom after most of the others had gone. His attorneys lingered near the stairwell, but he asked them to step back and give us a moment. Burton stayed close enough to keep us in view. Suzanne went downstairs with Dorothea. For the first time in years, Adrian looked like neither a businessman nor a caretaker. He looked like my son at the tail end of a long illness, thinner, shaken, uncertain whether I would reach out to him. "Dad," he said. I waited. Portia gave them everything. The records were already there before she opened her mouth. She cut the furnace off at your direction. I didn't mean for you to get hurt. It was one night. We knew you had space heaters. You knew I was in the house. He looked away. The hotel deal would have made everyone whole, not just me. You would have had the finest room in a building my money bought from Portia's brother at twice its actual worth. I could have turned it around. His voice climbed, then he reined it back in. I made mistakes, but I managed that trust for 9 years. It grew. The investments grew under the corporate trustee. You collected fees. I kept Suzanne at a distance. Mom knew she was reckless. Your mother told you to stop driving a wedge between us. He flinched. She recorded me while she was dying. How is that fair? Truth doesn't become unjust simply because you had no idea there was a witness. Adrian's eyes filled. They're going to charge me. Probably. You could tell them this is a family matter. The bank reported it, but you can refuse to cooperate. You can say you don't want prosecution. There it was. The ask hiding beneath every other ask. What would you do if I said yes, I asked? Hope moved across his face. I'd make restitution. I'd sell the house, the cars, everything. I'd get counseling. I'd put this back together. Would you admit what you did in writing? His hope faded. My lawyer says I can't. Would you apologize to Suzanne in public that could be used against me? Would you acknowledge that I have capacity, of course? But the petition was based on what I believed at the time. Even then, every admission came with an exit built in. I moved closer. Adrian, I can forgive the 5-year-old who stole $3 for candy. I can forgive the frightened son who stepped in to manage my bills after surgery. I may even find it in me to forgive the man standing before me now someday. But I will not shield the man who forged my incapacity, took 9 years of my life, and worked to have me locked away before I could find out. He began to cry. I'm your son. Yes. My own voice nearly gave out. That is why this cuts so deep. It is not why the consequences go away. So you're choosing Suzanne? No, I am choosing the truth. You are the one who made it feel as though only one of my children could survive. He dragged the back of his hand across his face. Mom would hate this. Your mother warned you about exactly this. His attorneys moved toward us. A detective waited near the courtroom doors, not to arrest him that day, but to schedule an interview. Adrian looked at me one final time. If I go to prison, that's on you. I shook my head. No, son. That sentence belongs to you as well. He walked away. I leaned against the wall after he vanished down the stairs. Burton stood beside me without a word. Was I cruel? I asked. No, it felt cruel. Boundaries often do when someone has built their life around crossing them. Suzanne came back up and took my hand. She did not ask what Adrian had said. She simply stood with me until I was ready to move. The legal proceedings outlasted the headlines. Over the following 14 months, investigators traced money through Vail VDM vehicle titles, club accounts, and real estate transfers. The Findlay house was sold. The 2 luxury vehicles were surrendered. Vail's remaining accounts were turned over. Insurance carried by the corporate trustee covered part of the losses caused by its employees' failures. In the end, the trust recovered a little more than $3 million. Legal and forensic costs consumed a portion. The hotel advance and the proposed purchase had never left the trust, so the principal held close to $28 million despite everything. Portia pleaded guilty to conspiracy falsifying business records and attempted financial exploitation of an older adult. Her cooperation reduced her sentence, but did not erase it. She served 11 months in county custody, followed by home confinement and restitution supervision. Adrian rejected the first plea offer. He kept insisting Dwight Farrow designed the scheme and Portia executed it. Then the digital expert recovered deleted drafts of the false medical letter from an old VDM backup. Adrian's username appeared in the revision history. He pleaded guilty before trial. The judge sentenced him to 30 months in federal custody for fraud-related offenses, followed by supervised release and joint restitution obligations. Some people online said the sentence was too short. Others said, I should have saved my son. None of them had sat at our kitchen table when he was 9. None had watched him teach Suzanne to throw a baseball. None had heard Loretta tell him he would lose more than money. Justice did not erase those memories. It made space for them to exist without overriding the present. I wrote Adrian once a month. I did not send money beyond what prison rules allowed for basic books and calls. I did not contact officials seeking any special consideration. My letters held ordinary things. Weather Rail Museum repairs Eli's baseball games, the maple tree losing a limb in a storm. For 6 months, Adrian did not write back. Then a letter arrived. Dad, I keep trying to put together an apology that doesn't come out sounding like a defense. Every version has a reason inside it. Mom died. The business failed. Dwight Farrow showed me a loophole. Portia wanted the house. You needed help. Suzanne hated me. All of those things are true, but not one of them made my hand sign your name. At first I told myself I was only borrowing authority. I'd stabilize everything, earn more, and restore it before you ever noticed. Then I grew accustomed to being the person everyone had to come through. When you thanked me, I felt powerful and ashamed at the same time. The shame pushed me to hide more, so I needed more control. I don't expect forgiveness. I wanted you to know I finally understand that you were not the weak one in our family. I was. Adrian. I read it 3 times. Then I placed it in the drawer alongside Loretta's letter. Not because the two were equal, but because truth had at last found its way into both. Suzanne and I rebuilt slowly. I did not hand her a large check and expect money to mend the missing years. We started with Wednesdays. She and Eli came to the rail museum after school. I showed Eli the difference between a locomotive motor and a generator. Suzanne brought sandwiches. Sometimes we talked about the years that were gone. Sometimes we didn't. When the college restored her position, I attended her first public lecture. She introduced me simply as her father. That word felt like an honor I was still in the process of earning. I asked whether she wanted to become a future trust advisor. She said no. Good, I replied. Your mother would approve. We revised my estate plan with independent counsel. Suzanne remained a beneficiary, but no family member would control another person's health or daily finances. Adrian's forfeiture under Loretta's trust was irrevocable. In my personal will, I left him a small, supervised education fund for any future grandchildren and a box of family photographs. I was not ready to leave him wealth. I was not willing to erase him either. With the trust committee's help, I created the Callahan Voice Project with an initial $4 million endowment. It funded independent legal consultations and financial reviews for older adults caught up in questionable guardianship petitions or suspected exploitation. Claudia joined its advisory board. Dorothea trained volunteers to ask one essential question before any conversation about protection could begin. What does the older person want? Burton turned down a paid position. He agreed to show up to meetings if the coffee was worth drinking. I fixed the porch that spring. I replaced the furnace even though the old one still ran because I no longer wanted that machine sitting below my house like a low hum of remembered danger. The new system cost $7,900. I paid the bill myself and kept a copy in my own file. Then I bought a fishing boat. It was not entirely ridiculous. I used 22 FT center console, dependable motor room, enough for 3. I named it Loretta's Argument. Suzanne laughed the moment she saw the lettering. She would hate that she said. She would pretend to. Eli wore a life jacket 2 shades too bright and wanted to know whether trains could tow boats. I told him, anything can be moved once you understand where the power comes from. 2 years after I walked into Harrow County Savings, Claudia asked me to speak at a training session for bank employees. I didn't stand up there and walk them through every variety of fraud. Experts handle that. I told them what it was like to be the person sitting across the desk. Don't assume an old coat means poverty, I said. Don't assume a large balance means freedom. And when a relative steps in to answer every question on behalf of an older person, find a respectful way to speak with that person alone. Afterward, a young loan officer asked what I would have done if the furnace had never failed. That question stayed with me. Maybe I would have found out about the trust eventually. The bank might have sent a new statement. Adrian's hotel plan might have triggered an audit. Suzanne might have tried one more time. Or maybe Adrian would have moved me into Ridgecroft Senior Living by Monday. Maybe the hotel deal would have closed. Maybe every objection I raised would have been logged in a chart as agitation. I might have lived out my days in the care of people paid from my own accounts while my son explained that I no longer had any understanding of them. A $6,000 loan application did not deliver me on its own. Claudia's choice to close her office door and press one more question did. Suzanne's refusal to discard old evidence did. Burton's copies did. Loretta's foresight did. And eventually my own willingness to accept that trusting someone had never required me to look past what he had done. On the 2nd anniversary of the court ruling, Suzanne, Eli, and I took Loretta's Argument out onto Lake Erie. The morning was clear and cold. A thin mist lay across the surface of the water. Eli gripped the fishing rod with absolute concentration. Suzanne poured coffee from a thermos. I sat behind the wheel and watched the sunlight work its way across the lake. Grandpa Eli said, Mom says you're rich. Suzanne nearly lost her grip on the coffee. I did not say it like that. I laughed. Your mother is right, but probably not for the reason you think. He frowned. Do you still have $28 million children? Ask the questions adults find ways to ornament. Something close to that, I said. Then why is your car so old? Because it starts. He thought about that and nodded. And because money is a tool, I added. If you let it become the one in charge, it will make terrible decisions. Suzanne turned to look toward the shoreline. That sounds like Grandma. Most of my better ideas do. Eli's line jumped. He shouted and started reeling. The fish was small, no longer than my hand, but he carried on as though he had pulled something precious up from the deep. I helped him work the hook free. He wanted to keep it. I told him it was too small. But I caught it, he protested. That doesn't mean it's yours to keep. He'd looked let down, then lowered the fish back into the water. It caught the light once beneath the surface and was gone. Suzanne rested her hand on my shoulder. For years, I believed peace meant holding the family together, no matter the price. I understand things differently now. Peace is not a locked door, a swallowed argument, or a silence everyone agrees not to disturb. Peace is being able to sit inside your own life without needing someone's permission. I still loved Adrian. Some mornings that love felt indistinguishable from grief. Some evenings it felt like something closer to hope. Forgiveness, I came to understand, was not a door I had to walk through before I was ready. It was a road I could travel without carrying him on my back. Suzanne and I could not get back the 8 years we had lost. We could only refuse to surrender the next 8. The money covered lawyers, repairs, restitution work, and possibilities I had never seen coming. But the most valuable thing that came back to me appeared in no accounting ledger. It was my voice, the same voice Adrian had described as confused, the same voice I had muffled to keep the peace, the same voice that finally told a courtroom, a bank, and my own son that I was still present. As we swung the boat toward home, I thought back to that first question in Claudia's office. Why are you asking us for $6,000 at the time? I thought I had come in to fix a furnace. That is where Gerald's story leaves us, not with a tidy resolution, but with something more honest. A man standing at the edge of his own life, asking whether it still belonged to him, and finding out that it did. What this cost cannot be measured in legal fees or years lost, though both were steep. It cost Gerald the version of his son he had always hoped was real. I believe God places certain moments in our path, not to break us, but to return us to ourselves. And that first question in Claudia's office, the one about a furnace, was one of those moments. What it taught was this: the people who love you do not need to control you to prove it. If you are over 50 and someone you trust is handling your finances, ask to see every statement yourself in writing on a schedule without asking permission. That is not suspicion. That is dignity. If a family member begins answering questions on your behalf in rooms where decisions are made, find a way to speak alone. Your voice is a legal right, not a courtesy. If someone tells you that you are no longer capable of understanding your own life, demand a second opinion from a doctor you chose yourself. Do not let fear do the paperwork. And if the people around you insist that protecting you means keeping you quiet, that is not protection. That is control with a softer name. This is the kind of family revenge story that doesn't stay in one house. It lives in the silence of too many families. If you know someone, a parent, a neighbor, any adults 50 plus in your life who may be facing something like what Gerald faced, share this with them. It may be the thing that opens a door they didn't know they could still walk through. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read them. Subscribe to Honor Revenge Stories so you never miss what comes next. And thank you genuinely for spending this time here. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.